Instagram is changing, but you already knew that. I talk about the changes coming to Instagram all the time on this channel, but the truth is, in order for us to really thrive in this new world of Instagram, we need to make some changes too. And that brings me on to today's video. In today's video, I'm going to be telling you my new Instagram strategy for 2025, and spoiler alert, things are changing. By the way, this video is sponsored by HubSpot, more on them later. All right, let's start off with the fundamental elements of my strategy. I want to make sure that we talk about these elements because you might be making some changes to your own strategy and maybe you're using this video as a source of inspiration. So with that in mind, we have to make sure we cover two initial points when it comes to our new strategy. The first is our audience, so who are we trying to speak to? And the second is our value points. Now, when it comes to my audience, the way that I like to describe you guys are people who use social media for a purpose. So you might be using social media to build a business, become a content creator, build a community, whatever it may be, you're using social media for a purpose beyond you just using it for personal use. That's how I group my entire audience together. If you do not have a clear idea of who your audience are, you will struggle to follow along with the rest of this video. Your audience is the essence of any social media channel. If you do not know who you're talking to, how on earth are you going to talk to them? Now, the second point that I mentioned were my value points. Now, if you've watched a lot of my videos, you've heard me talk about my audience and my value points quite frequently, but don't worry, for the rest of this video, we're going to be diving into some elements that I've definitely not publicly shared with you guys before. But in case you're new here, we do have to ensure that you've put some thought and attention into the value that you will be providing your audience through your social media channels. Now, the four key value points are educational, inspirational, relatable, or entertaining. You don't have to just pick one. You can have multiple different value points that you rotate between whenever you create content. The best way to think of your value points are basically a vehicle for you to share the content that you want to create. So for me, I know that my audience use social media for a purpose. All of my content is about marketing and entrepreneurship. My value points, so the vehicle in which I connect those two things, is educational content. So I'm going to talk about marketing and entrepreneurship through an educational content lens, and I'm going to be speaking directly to an audience of people who use social media for a purpose. Do you see how I beautifully linked all those things together? That's what you're going to need to do too. Now, before we move on to the changes that I'm going to be making to my content, this actually makes me nervous because I'm like, you know, when you say something out loud, then you have to really do it. That's how I feel about this video. I'm basically enlisting all of you to keep me accountable. Before we dive into that though, I do want to share a resource with you, which is going to make your new strategy a lot easier to implement in 2025. Now, I'm well aware that nowadays, a lot of us are across multiple different social media channels, and managing multiple social media channels can get very, very messy. That's why for today's video, I want to share HubSpot social media calendar templates, because these are going to help you streamline your strategy and simplify your workload. All right, so let's break down what's inside. This free resource gives you access to calendar templates for every platform, from YouTube to X to Instagram to TikTok and so on and so forth, a monthly planning calendar to schedule your content for the rest of the year, a content repository to track and reuse your brand's white papers, ebooks and other assets for different audiences, a ready to upload template for HubSpot to automate your social scheduling, and a user guide packed with insights from Samantha Meller, who is the head of the Hustle social media team. These templates essentially make managing your posts across multiple different social media sites so much easier for you, so that you can focus on building your brand and engaging with your audience. And the best part, guys, I've said it before and I'll say it again, these are completely free to download and use. So to streamline your social media strategy and to save time, I recommend you get the social media calendar templates free of charge from HubSpot. You can get them via the link in my description, and a huge thank you to HubSpot for sponsoring this video. All right, let's talk about the juicy stuff. My content. How is my content changing this year? Well, I'd be lying to you if I said that when I look back on my content on Instagram from 2024, I was super proud of it. I'm not. There are some pieces of content that I absolutely love. I did a content series called Creator Confessions, and I loved that series. But for the most part, Instagram has really taken a back seat when it comes to my overall social media strategy. YouTube was a channel that I really focused on this year, and to be honest, the year before that as well. I am going to try to change that in 2025. I am determined to give some other social media platforms some love. As much as YouTube is still my fave, other ones deserve attention too, right? So I've come up with a few different content formats that I'm going to be testing in 2025, and I've come up with these based on what's working in the market and also what's worked for me previously. The first type of content, which I'm really excited for, is going to be the more raw, unedited style of Reel, where I'm talking about specific news stories or creator updates. Now, this is an example of one that I shared recently. I filmed it very, very quickly, and I was talking about a change that Instagram are going to make to their story highlights. This video actually performed really well, and it made me think. Previously, my content on Instagram has always been quite highly edited, and whilst that's not going to go away completely, I do think I'm missing a trick by not at least trialing the more raw TikTok style content on my Instagram feed. And the type of content which works really well for that is when I'm talking about something that is hot off the press. I always get confused if that's actually the phrase, so I'm just going to run with it. Hot off the press, so like some news article that's just landed to do with an Instagram update or the creator economy or something like that, that I can film very quickly, get it up within minutes. Previously, I would think to myself, I can't get this up too soon because I need to set up my studio, I need to get it edited, and it would be this whole kerfuffle. And I think that's actually holding me back from sharing more content on Instagram. So that is one type of content that I'm going to be pushing, or at least trialing, for the first few months of 2025. I should also say that this test is a reflection of where Instagram is going. They are trying to become a less polished platform, similar to TikTok. They've been trying for a while though, and I don't think it's fully caught on for everyone. So let's just see how this test goes. The next type of content I did try to implement this year, but I'm not gonna lie, I struggled with it a lot more than I thought I would. And this is more like personable content. This is also reflecting a general content trend across multiple platforms, where creators are seeing a lot of success when they implement a bit more of their personal life into their content. This isn't to say that you should completely deviate from the content that you already create. If you're known for creating finance content, still create finance content. This is just a note to say that creators who inject a bit of their personal life into their content strategy, let's say 20% of their posts are actually to do with their personal life, not just their niche or their usual content. People often see higher engagement from this because it's a reminder that they're human, it's a chance to connect with your audience on a deeper level, and that usually results in a spike in overall performance of your content. I said already that I struggled with this year, and I think the reason why I struggled is because my initial approach to this was once a month I'll share a photo dump and it will just be a mixture of photos from my life. What I forgot to account for is, in order for you to have a photo dump from your personal life, you need to be taking more photos of your personal life. This isn't something that I used to have an issue with. I used to do this naturally, but I think as a result of the career that I've built for myself, I've realized when I scroll through my photo and video library that almost everything is to do with work. Which is actually a little bit depressing. I don't even really take photos. Like if I'm out with Jamie, my husband, like we used to go and do like full-on photo shoots because we used to have a joint Instagram together, and we just do not even reach for our phones anymore. And I think it's because I'm so used to having my phone and content as part of my job that I just don't reach for it when I'm not working. So I would get to the end of the month and be like, I don't have anything to share. So that's something that I need to be a lot more intentional about next year, because I do really, really want to share more of my life. Keep in mind that I'm always going to be a somewhat private person, because at the end of the day, you're not following me to know about my life. But I do think there's more that I could share, even about my life through the lens of my work and like what's going on behind the scenes. Speaking of behind the scenes, this is another type of content that I'm going to be integrating more into my main feed on Instagram. Now, I did say main feed there because I do think I share this already on my stories. So if you follow me and you look at my stories, you often see my day calendar where I break down every single thing that I'm working on that day. The feedback you guys give me on that content is insane. Like I'll meet people on the street and they'll tell me that those calendar posts are actually their favorite content that I share, which is wild when I think about it. And that tells me that you guys want that content. I've fallen into the trap, as we all do. Okay, none of us is perfect. If there's one thing you get from this entire video, it's that even when your job is to know everything about social media, you still are going to fall short on some elements, right? We're all human. I have fallen into the very human trap of convincing myself that my life is boring, and I'm therefore hesitant to share like what I do on a day-to-day basis on my main feed because I think it's boring. And it's so silly because I know my life's not boring. In fact, none of our lives are really boring. People find so much comfort in the mundane or in a usual schedule. So I want to start integrating that more into my feed. So whether that's like a time lapse of me working and breaking down every single thing that I did that day, just an example of what that might look like, that is definitely a content type that I'm going to be introducing a lot more this year. If you notice me switching between next year and this year, it's because I'm trying to rationalize the fact that this video isn't going to go out for a little while. And by the time you're watching this, it probably is already 2025. Another area that needs to be considered is the frequency of my content. Up until this point, I have been posting around 3 times a week for years, because my objective was engagement and Instagram just wasn't my core channel. Whilst it still won't be my core channel, I do want to increase my posting frequency to 5 times per week in 2025, which makes me a bit nervous, but it's fine. We're going to talk about how I'm going to make it happen. But it is worth saying that that is part of my strategy as well. And the reason why I do want to increase my posting frequency is because a healthy posting frequency, which is usually between 5 to 7 times per week, go hand in hand with a healthy view count. I have to feed the platform and feed the algorithm with content. Okay, so those are the changes I'm going to be making to my content. I now want to touch on the metrics that I'm going to be using. Your metrics are essentially the units of measurement that you're going to be using to analyze your content and see if it's performing well. I'm so passionate about this because so many people get this part wrong.
Let me explain.
There are a few different ways that you can measure the success or the effectiveness of your Instagram channel. You can look at your content's views, interactions, and your followers. There are other metrics, but these are like the 3 core metrics that you tend to see when you open up your analytics dashboard, right? So we're just going to focus on those. Now, the bit what people get wrong is that they focus on the wrong metric for their goal. So previously, my goal for my Instagram channel has just been engagement, and you can kind of see that in how my content has performed. The views haven't been great. It's fluctuated quite a lot, but the engagement, when you look at the amount of views that my content is getting, has actually been quite high. So let's say, for example, a reel gets 5,000 views. I likely would have received 500 interactions or like different forms of engagement on that reel. And that would have actually been an engagement rate of 10%, because out of the 5,000 people who saw it, 10% engaged with it. And that's really healthy. But it's only healthy if my goal is engagement. If my goal is views, that's not good. We want to be aiming for a lot more views than 5,000. We want to be in the 10,000, 20,000, 100,000, million plus mark, right? And that's why it's important to have a good idea of what your goal is and to match your metric to your goal. So if you are trying to get more views on your content, your metric should be your views. If you are trying to get more engagement, build a community, then your metric should be your interactions. If you are trying to grow your audience in terms of followers, then your metric should be your follower count. Do you see where I'm going with this? Obviously, you could pay attention to the other metrics, but it's important that you identify what your key metric is. So when it comes to my key metric, as I mentioned previously, it was engagement. We are switching it up. And that makes me nervous. We are now going to focus on views. I have not focused on views for years, and my account has suffered as a result. We're switching up. It's important to know when it's time to switch things up, and the time has come. And now we're going to be focusing on views as my key metric. So that is going to be the thing that I'm looking at and assessing when I'm uploading my content. Right? Okay, so let's talk about your tactics. Now, if you're following along and you're also making some tweaks to your own strategy, your tactics are the smaller things that you do on a regular basis that help the overall performance of your account and hopefully help you reach your goal. Now, there are so many different tactics you can use on Instagram. I will link to a masterclass that I have inside the collective where I dive into this. I'll also link to a masterclass about analytics as well below. But essentially, we all want to have a few different tactics that we are trialing at any one time. Let me explain to you what my tactics will be. And one of them I actually need your help on because I'm not sure if I should really do it or not. So I need your thoughts. So the first tactic is really, really basic, but it is something that I have struggled with in the past. And this tactic is to respond to at least 90% of my comments under my content. Now, as I said, this is a very basic tactic. The reason why this works is because it allows you to connect with your audience. It allows you to understand how your audience are responding to your content. And also it feeds the algorithm. The more comments you have under your content, the more the algorithm sees you engaging with your audience, the more likely it is that your content will be pushed out to more people. The reason why this is one of my tactics though, is because, as I said, it's something that I've always struggled with. As I've already established at the start of this video, Instagram's been pretty low down on the pecking order when it comes to my hierarchy of social media channels. And as a result of it being low down, it means that when things have gotten busy for me, it's been one of the first things to go. So when that comes off my to-do list, so does responding to comments. The way that I'm going to improve this is actually to do some habit stacking. There's a book called, oh my God, what is that book called? It's like such a popular book. You know what? I'm not going to Google this because I know it.
A few moments later.
Atomic Habits. Knew I'd get it. Atomic Habits. In Atomic Habits, they talk about this idea of habit stacking. It's basically when you take an existing habit and you stack a new one onto it, it increases the chances of you actually completing this new habit. For me, the habit that I'm going to stack responding to comments on top of is going to be my daily walks with my beautiful dog. Where is she? Oh, she's asleep. When I take Mojo on long walks, we often find a bench and sit for 5 minutes so that she can chill and practice watching the world go by. So what I'm going to do from now on is respond to comments when I'm taking that bench break, right? I'm going to merge those habits together. Another tactic that I'm going to be doing is adding monthly analytical reviews of my Instagram channel onto my end of month general reviews. So at the end of every month, I go over my finances, my goals, my YouTube channel, and now also my Instagram. I do actually have a analytics tracker that I use. Again, available inside the collective. I'll link it below. And I'm going to make a point to update that more regularly and also just spend some time in my analytics on a monthly basis so that I'm actually staying really close and connected to what's working. The third and final tactic, the one that I need your help on and just your thoughts on, is lives. Should I go live on Instagram more? I do these events with my other brand, The Creator Project, where a few times a year we'll do a big deep dive into a subject related to creators. Sometimes I'll get guest speakers, and that's a whole production, and that's not going anywhere, right? I think because I already do that, I'm often hesitant to go live on any other channel because part of me is okay, well, I want to save the deep dive, heavy, valuable content for that. Those events are free, by the way. If you don't follow The Creator Project already, the links are below. So part of me thinks just save all of that for that. But then that doesn't mean that I can't just go live live sometimes just to talk about what's going on in the creator space and like what's going on with social media. But if I do go live on Instagram, I want it to be that. I want it to be really casual. I want it to be a conversation. I don't want it to be me just presenting like I always am. Like I want to speak to you guys. Can you let me know in the comment section? Just write the word live if that would be something that you'd like for me to do. Okay, last but not least, and an essential part of this entire process is we have to talk about the how. So I've talked about all these different changes that I'm making to my Instagram and it all sounds so nice and so exciting, but we often make these plans to change our social media content. And a lot of the time, the plans never come to fruition. Why is that? It's because we've not answered the question, how are we going to make all of these changes? If your changes to your strategy are going to require more work from you, you need to figure out how you're going to facilitate that work. Okay? This is the hurdle a lot of us fall on. I think that's right. God, I feel like I bounce between articulate to can't string a sentence together like within minutes. I don't know how you guys keep up with me. So for me, a lot of these changes are going to require me to spend significantly more time on my Instagram channel, like at least an additional few hours a week at a very minimum, right? I don't currently have a few hours spare, so I need to figure out where I'm going to find that time. An industry secret, many creators that you currently follow have content managers. Content managers are essentially people who sometimes do the editing of their content, but more often than not, they just focus on distributing their content. So they will be the ones who schedule their content across multiple platforms, make sure it goes live, etc., etc. I have never had one of those because in my mind, I was like, I just don't need one. I've always been really on top of my scheduling for YouTube. And therefore I thought I'm on top of this and I don't really need any help anywhere else. But the truth is, if I'm going to increase my posting frequency on Instagram and if I'm going to be spending more time on Instagram per week, I need to find some way to save some time. And I think the way that I do that is by training my current employee, Hayley, to actually do my content distribution for me. So that is what I'm going to do. And that is going to be my how. That's going to be how I actually make these changes. Obviously, if you have a team member and you're thinking of doing the same thing, and I'm aware that it's an incredibly privileged thing to have a team member, remember that you now need to figure out how they're going to have the time to do that. So the challenge of saving time never really goes away. It just gets passed on to someone else, but you have to make sure you're on top of that. And that is my new Instagram strategy for 2025. If you're not following me on Instagram already, now's the time to go and follow me to see if I actually stick with any of the things that I've just said. No, I'm kidding. I'm sticking with it. The content's going to be great. You won't regret it. Don't forget that you can grab HubSpot social media calendar templates for free via the link in my description. If you feel like hanging around, I recommend watching this video. It's all about the social media trends for 2025. This is one of my favorite videos to film. It's so important to every single person watching, so I really recommend that you go and watch it. Thank you so much for watching this video. As always, I cannot wait to see you in my next one.